Hi everyone, and welcome back to the George Collection. I'm Rachel Rightside Blonde. Today's episode will be short and sweet, but it's about a character that's been in the news a lot lately and has graced at least 2 covers of George magazine, and that is Rupert Murdoch. He was on the February 1997 issue when Bill Gates was discussing world dominance and Murdoch and MSNBC, and he's also on the cover of the February 1999 issue, just 2 years later after the 97, and it's about Murdoch's new global empire. So let's get into it. This article is called The Perpetual Predator. No one could ever accuse Rupert Murdoch of mellowing. After a year of masterminding multi-million-dollar acquisitions, raising nearly $3 billion on Wall Street, and finding a new love, Murdoch leaves us only one question worth asking. Who will fall prey to the revitalized tycoon in 1999? The article begins by talking about his new fiancée, and then moves in to say this. It's safe to say that Murdoch's power is now beyond calculation. He may have become a U.S. citizen in 1985, yet he now belongs not to the world of nation-states or old-fashioned totems of queen or republic, but to his own steadily growing realm of companies, spread across 5 continents and 6 different media, turning over $18.9 billion a year and making a post-tax profit of $1.6 billion. He controls 122 Australian, British, and American newspapers, book publishers, Australian, British, and U.S. TV stations, including the Fox network, direct broadcast satellite television stretching from Star TV in Asia to B-Sky B in Europe, to half ownership of a German channel and a joint venture in Latin America, the 20th Century Fox movie studio, and a host of home video and online services. Born in Australia, Murdoch has created the best as well as the worst artifacts of popular culture. Studs and A Current Affair were his gifts to the rest of us, as well as The Simpsons, The X-Files, and Beverly Hills 90210. White-haired and leather-countenanced, he doesn't look like he slows down for a moment. He'll exhaust every opponent, says Michael Grade, a media entrepreneur and former chairman of Britain's Channel 4 TV station. When the rest of us are struggling with Zimmer frames, he'll be fighting to put Titanic 6 on 200 screens in China. There's no stopping Rupert. In a remarkable TV biography yet to be seen in the U.S., Murdoch confirmed this view of himself. I think News Corp would lose a lot if it was just another public company run by a board with the approval of the fund managers, he said. When media companies are just run by money managers, they don't last long. When he was asked if he would ever step down as head of the company, Murdoch replied, "I'm not planning to do it for some time. I mean, to walk away and retire. It's a pretty dismal prospect. I don't want to do that." Just as remarkable is the fact that Murdoch rules this world in person with only 18 executive intermediaries. During 1 week last spring, he was in LA, New York, and London before traveling to Australia the following week. Doing business from his Gulfstream jet, Murdoch glides over the surface of his empire, halting at times of crisis or instead interrupting the sleep of his subordinates to issue instructions. One former editor revealed that he still dreams regularly of visitations from Murdoch. It is fatal to make the mistake of taking him for granted. I wonder how the king is today is the question you must ask yourself every day you spend at Rupert's court. Otherwise you'll be finished, just like that. The article goes on to say, for all of his influence, Murdoch is fallible. At the end of 1991, he nearly lost his companies as a result of overexpansion. At the lowest point, Murdoch was $8.8 billion in debt and certain of only $500 million in income. Those who have crossed swords with him say that he is not always a man of his word. His insistence on controlling everything has led to an atmosphere of blind fear at News Corp. Last spring, evidence of the incompetent practices of his companies surfaced after the abrupt cancellation of a critical book about China by the former governor of Hong Kong, Sir Christopher Patten. The editors of Murdoch's Anglo-American publishing house, HarperCollins, announced that they had withdrawn the book because it wasn't satisfactory, but under public pressure, Murdoch has been forced to admit that Patten's book had been pulled so as to not offend his Chinese friends. It's totally contemptible, says the critic Hilton Kramer, who was formerly a columnist at the New York Post. Remember what Lenin said, when it's time to hang the bourgeoisie, they'll give you the rope to do it. Murdoch is a man wholly without morals. The article goes on and says, Murdoch's influence in Britain was profound. His papers went a long way toward destroying the last vestiges of class difference in Britain. Courtesy of Murdoch papers, royal baiting became a national sport. Prince Charles, ridiculed for his caring, New Age spirituality, was nicknamed the Loon, and the royal family, because of their origins, became the Germans. After Murdoch had watched the staff tidy up the Times offices in preparation for a visit from the Queen, he became enraged. "Why will they do it for her?" he asked. "Why won't they work all the time?" Continuing on, Murdoch showed few signs of letting up by the mid-1990s. His satellite service in Japan was followed by matching ventures in India and China. But it was not as easy as he had anticipated to reach the potential market of 1 billion-plus Chinese subscribers. In 1993, Murdoch, flushed with enthusiasm over the end of the Cold War, proclaimed to an audience of London businessmen that George Orwell had been wrong, and that totalitarian regimes everywhere were being threatened. Satellite broadcasting makes it possible for information-hungry residents of many closed societies to bypass state-controlled television channels, he observed. A month later, the Chinese government imposed a ban on the ownership of satellite dishes. Murdoch, who had been so eager to uphold free enterprise, now took instruction from Beijing. The Chinese were angered by the BBC, which had shown a documentary depicting Mao's taste in young girls, and Murdoch obliged by removing the BBC's World News Service from his TV satellite. "We're not proud of that decision," he said. "It was the only way." Motivated by guilt or by a belated sense of mortality, other tycoons have splashed money around in their latter years. But Murdoch has restricted his gifts to the odd professorship at Oxford and his ex-wife's favorite charities. His papers still print their quota of lies and trash. Familiarity has not rendered Murdoch's brutally plain speech more endearing. All he could find to say about the behavior of paparazzi in the wake of Princess Diana's death was that photographs would now be somewhat cheaper, and that this would be a good thing for his company. He is rumored to be a born-again Christian, but this did not appear to be inconsistent with sleaze and raunchiness in the pursuit of ratings. And the article finishes with, "No one denies that Murdoch is a remarkable businessman, but as he stands at the height of his influence, there are many who don't think that the newspapers he has produced are good or even worthwhile. The pursuit of enlightenment has never been his primary concern. What he has created represents the largest accumulation of power over words or images ever vested in one man's hands. But for that reason, it may also be highly vulnerable to the ravages of time. But I suppose Rupert still thinks he can beat the odds. I also imagine that Rupert, in his heart of hearts, still believes that he is immortal." It's just interesting that George Magazine brings up Rupert Murdoch and the power that Murdoch has, and that we're still seeing this play out today. And I really do believe that John Kennedy could see this coming back in the 90s, and that's one of the reasons why he started George Magazine. The other was for us to do our own research and get involved in the political process. But he also, I feel, was trying to warn us about what was to come if we didn't take a deeper look. And here we are in 2023. That does it for this episode of the George Collection. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week, and I will see you next time.
Magazine, George, which is a hoot of a magazine. I thought you were a lawyer.
I was.
What happened?
Well, we decided, actually taking a cue from folks like yourself and you around the 1992 election, that there was an opportunity here to change the definition of a political magazine. Certainly the way Americans were accessing information about politics and politicians was changing. Candidates were appearing on late-night talk shows, on talk radio, on sitcoms, and there was a kind of a leveling process, and while the rest of media clearly had caught up with that, we felt that political magazines per se hadn't.
Your mother was a hell of an editor at Doubleday.
That's what I hear.
Would she have liked George?
I think she would have.